So for question number 1, it says find all of the roots if one factor is 3. So if one factor is 3, let's do synthetic division. So 3 goes on the outside. And then we're going to list our coefficients, which would be 1, -5, -2, and +24. So in order to do synthetic division, you bring down the first number, and then you take 1 times 3, put that under -5, add, and then you take 3 times -2, that goes here, you add, and then you take -8 times 3, you get -24. You should always end with a 0. So right here where it says, what is your quadratic factor? These 3 numbers are your quadratic factor. So find the option that has a 1, a -2, and an 8. So what you're going to put here is x squared minus 2x minus 8. So your linear factors is what you get when you factor down this quadratic factor. So we need 2 numbers that multiply to be -8 and add to -2. So we need to factor this down. So in order to factor this, I need 2 numbers that multiply to be -8 and add to -2. So what numbers multiply to be -8 and add to -2? -4 and +2. And then anytime you have a root, the factor is the opposite. So the factor is going to be x minus 3. We need to add that too. There's 3 factors. If I multiply these 3 together, I would have this polynomial. Now set all 3 of these equal to 0 to get your roots. So your first one, if x minus 4 equals 0, would be x equals 4. And then your second one is x equals -2. And the third one would be x equals +3. Okay, so remember the distinct roots, the maximum is your degree. So if it's a 4th degree, the maximum would be 4. The minimum for an odd is always 1, but for an even, it is none or 0. So because 3 is an odd number, the minimum would be 1. I would definitely have this on your cheat sheet. So even degrees have a minimum of 0. Odd degrees have a minimum of 1. Okay, if your discriminant is positive, what does that mean? 2 real roots. So I'm going to look down here and find where it says 2 distinct real roots. And then I'm also going to choose where it says b squared minus 4ac is greater than 0. For when the discriminant is 0, choose b squared minus 4ac equals 0, and you have 1 real root. When it's negative, that means it is less than 0. You have 2 imaginary roots. Now this says that the parabola would have no x-intercepts. So which one would that be? Which of the 3? For a negative, yep, because if it's negative, you have no x-intercept, so that would go there. If it's 0, you have one x-intercept. And if it's positive, you have two x-intercepts. So for number 5, it says, which graph could be a fifth degree with a negative? So if it's negative, that means that the right arrow goes down. So the first thing I'm going to do is cross out all of the choices that have a right arrow that goes up. So C wouldn't work, F and E wouldn't work. Also, because it's a fifth degree, I know that the arrow should be opposite. So I would also cross out B. So the only two choices I have left are A and D. So how many x-intercepts? It says which could match. So honestly, it's A and D. But I don't know if it is going to allow you to choose A and D. So we're going to choose the one that has 5 x-intercepts. So that would be choice D. So I would choose D. But theoretically, if it has opposite arrows, I mean, just because it's a fifth degree doesn't mean it has 5 x-intercepts. It could only have 3. It has to have at least 1, and it can't have more than 5. It can have anything between 1 and 5. So for question number 6 is the domain all real numbers, and that's yes. Everything that we have studied this semester except for a square root has a domain of all real numbers. So the domain is all real numbers. That is true. For the range, you're going to look at the y value. So when you look here, what is the y value? It looks like that y value is about -2. That's a little less than -2. So it says -2.3 to infinity. That's what I would choose for that one. Do you think this is even or odd based on the behavior? Even, because they're both sides are going up, is doing the same thing. So this is an even degree. And when you're looking at your x-intercepts, remember, because it has 1, 2, 3, it looks like it has 4. Wait, 1, 2, 3. This is a double root, so this counts as 2. So it has to be at least a third degree, right? But we know that it can't be a third because 3 is odd. So we're going to add 1, so this will be a fourth degree. So this one could be a fourth, it could be a sixth, it could be an eighth, but we're going to choose 4. Both sides are going up, so positive infinity. Then it looks like that's the only answer you could pick, so you can't miss that one. All right, so let's write our equation for this graph. So it right here, see, what is this point? That looks like that is -5, is that right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, okay. So x minus 5 is a factor. No, not x minus 5. You always flip it. So instead of x minus 5, what would the factor be? Plus 5. It's always the opposite. Make sure you have that in your notes. So if the graph crosses at -5, the factor would be x plus 5. And then right here, that's -1, so the factor is x plus 1. And then the third one, that is +2, so the factor is x minus 2. But notice the behavior of this one is it bounces, so this one would have to be squared. These two go through, so they're both going to stay odd. So go ahead and find those 3 choices and drag them up for number 10. Okay. So for question number 11, it says the student identified domain, range, and end behavior for 2 graph picture below. Did they do the problems correctly? If not, click the mistake. So let's look at this first graph. It is odd, so your domain and range would be all real numbers. I agree with that. The left side goes down and the right side goes up. So I agree. So it looks to me like one of these is wrong, because this is an odd degree. One side goes down and one side goes up. So it shouldn't have the same behavior. So this represents the left arrow, and this one is the right arrow. So this is the left arrow, and this one is the right arrow. And it looks to me like the left arrow is not going up. So the mistake is that this is wrong. That should not be positive. That should say negative infinity. And lastly is in behavior. So let's look at number 12. So for question number 12, that's k of x. So this right here tells me everything I need to know. Is that x to the 5th? So because that's positive, that means the right side is going to go up. And that's a 5th degree, so the left side does the opposite. So I need the one that says x approaches negative infinity, negative infinity. So it should be negative infinity, and positive infinity, positive infinity. For the second one, b of x, this is even and negative, so both sides go down. So I need the one that has 2 negative infinities on the end. And for the last one, the right side goes down because that's a -2, and the left side is going to do the opposite. So I need the one that says when x is negative, f of x is positive. And when x is positive, f of x is negative. And that is what you would select.